A routine traffic stop. That's what the officers called it when they pulled over a young black mom with her baby in the backseat. Flashing lights, sharp commands, and hands resting on holsters, the air thick with intimidation. But what they didn't know was that this woman wasn't just another driver heading home. She was the state attorney, the top prosecutor in the city, a woman who spent her career holding men like them accountable. In seconds, the power shifted. What began as harassment turned into humiliation, and her courage would soon ignite headlines across the nation. On a humid summer evening, as the last rays of the sun dipped below the skyline, Keisha Williams strapped her infant son into the car seat after finishing a long grocery run, her arms tired from balancing baby supplies, bags of food, and the endless weight of motherhood. She was no stranger to exhaustion, but she carried it with grace, humming a soft lullaby to calm her little boy as she settled into the driver's seat and started the engine. She thought only of getting home, feeding her child, and perhaps finding a moment to breathe. Yet in a matter of minutes, flashing red and blue lights pierced her rearview mirror, the shrill siren cutting through the quiet comfort of her car, and her stomach sank with the kind of dread no law-abiding person should feel, but every black parent knew too well. She pulled over, heart racing, clutching the steering wheel as her baby shifted in the back seat, sensing the tension. 2 police cruisers boxed her in, their headlights glaring like interrogators under a spotlight. From one, an officer swaggered toward her vehicle with the kind of false confidence that came from unchecked power, one hand resting near his holstered weapon. License and registration, he barked without greeting, without explanation, his tone sharp and commanding, as though speaking not to a citizen but to a suspect. Keisha took a slow breath, reminding herself that panic was dangerous. "Officer," she said, her voice calm but firm, "may I ask why I was stopped?" The second officer had already circled behind her car, his flashlight beam slicing across the back window where her baby sat strapped in, and he muttered something about a routine stop. But the way his eyes scanned the vehicle, the way his partner leaned forward as though ready to pounce, made it clear this wasn't routine, it was profiling, intimidation wrapped in the veil of procedure. "Step out of the vehicle," the first officer ordered, his hand flexing on his weapon. Keisha's chest tightened. She thought of the countless names turned into hashtags, of mothers who never made it home, of children who watched their parents forced to the ground, of headlines that turned lives into cautionary tales. But she wasn't just a young black mother driving home with her baby. She was the state attorney, elected by the people, entrusted with the law, responsible for holding officers like these accountable. And now, justice itself was on trial. "I'll get my license," she said softly, moving slowly, deliberately, her hands visible at all times. But as she reached into her purse, the first officer's voice exploded, "Keep your hands where I can see them." His partner's flashlight jolted upward, the beam blinding her eyes, her baby whimpering at the sudden chaos. Every instinct told her to freeze, but Keisha also knew she had a weapon of her own. Not fear, not anger, but truth. She reached inside her bag and withdrew not only her driver's license but a black leather case, and with deliberate precision, she flipped it open so the golden badge inside caught the glare of their headlights. "I'm State Attorney Keisha Williams," she said, her voice clear, steady, commanding, the voice that had silenced entire courtrooms. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The officers froze, their arrogance draining into pale disbelief, the weight of their mistake settling heavy in the night air. Ma'am," one stammered, we didn't realize." "Of course you didn't," she cut in, her eyes blazing, her baby's soft cries the only sound that dared interrupt her authority. "You didn't realize because you didn't care to. You saw a black woman with a baby. You saw someone you thought you could intimidate. You didn't ask questions, you demanded. You didn't explain, you assumed. You acted not out of law, but out of bias. This is exactly why the community doesn't trust you. And this," she lifted her badge higher, "is exactly why I exist." The younger officer's mouth opened, perhaps to apologize, but Keisha raised a hand to silence him. "I suggest you radio your supervisor immediately. Because by tomorrow morning, this routine stop will be the subject of a full review, and I will personally see to it that the public understands exactly how you treat the citizens you swore to protect." The officers fumbled with their radios, sweat forming on their brows, their earlier bravado shattered like glass. But Keisha had no interest in their excuses. She adjusted her rearview mirror, glanced at her baby whose wide eyes reflected confusion and fear, and whispered reassuringly, "It's okay, sweetheart. Mommy's got this." Then, without waiting for permission, without yielding an ounce of the power they tried to strip from her, she shifted her car into drive and pulled away, leaving them behind in the glow of their own flashing lights. By dawn, the story had broken across every platform. Local news, national headlines, social media feeds erupting with outrage and admiration. Cops target black mom with baby for routine stop, unaware she is the state attorney. But the reason it went viral was not simply because she was a public figure, it resonated because her courage exposed a reality millions lived daily, without a badge to shield them. Comment sections flooded with support. Parents who saw their own fears reflected in her story, activists demanding reform, even fellow attorneys and judges praising her composure. Yet beneath the headlines, Keisha knew the deeper truth. If she hadn't been who she was, that night could have ended differently. Her badge had protected her, but countless others had no such armor. In interviews, she spoke not of her title but of her community. Respect shouldn't depend on appearances, she told reporters, her baby resting on her hip. Justice must be equal, or it isn't justice at all. Her words became a rallying cry, echoing in town halls, in classrooms, in quiet conversations between parents who whispered about teaching their children survival instead of safety. The two officers, once arrogant under the cover of authority, now faced disciplinary hearings, their names stripped of the anonymity they had once hidden behind. But more importantly, the incident sparked mandatory training sessions, new oversight committees, and an uncomfortable but necessary reckoning in a city too long blind to its own prejudice. And as Keisha walked into her office the following week, the courthouse steps lined with supporters, her baby nestled against her shoulder, she knew this was more than just her story. It was a turning point, a reminder that sometimes justice isn't found in a courtroom but on the side of a road where someone chooses courage over fear.